You think I was always confident? You think I never doubted myself? Let me tell you about the night before I fought Sonny Liston for the first time. I couldn't sleep. I was scared. Here's this man who put grown men in the hospital. They said he'd kill me. They said I was too young, too pretty, too loud. They said Liston would shut my mouth for good. But you know what I did? I didn't tell anyone I was scared. I went to my room, got on my knees, and prayed. I reminded myself of all those mornings nobody saw, all those rounds I went when I was already exhausted, all that silent work. That's what gave me faith. Not the cameras, not the crowds, the work I did when I was alone. That work became my armor. And when I stepped in that ring, I wasn't the same scared kid. I was a man who had earned his confidence in the dark. That's what 90 days of silence will do for you. It'll turn your fear into faith. Listen, I know why you're watching this. You're tired. Tired of starting over. Tired of telling people about your dreams and then not following through. Tired of feeling like you're always one step behind everyone else. You post about your goals, you get some likes, maybe some comments, and for a moment it feels good. But then what? You're still in the same place, still struggling, still searching for that breakthrough. Here's your problem. You're addicted to the audience. You need people to see you trying because somewhere deep down, you don't believe you can actually do it. So you need their encouragement. You need their validation. You need them to remind you why you started. But champions don't work that way. Champions go into a cave for 90 days and come out different. Let me tell you what this video is going to give you. I'm not going to give you some motivational speech that pumps you up for an hour and then leaves you empty. I'm going to show you how to build something real, something that lasts, something that nobody can take from you. First, you're going to understand why silence is more powerful than noise. You think I became the greatest by talking? No. I became the greatest by doing the work when nobody was looking, then letting my performance in the ring do the talking. There's a difference between confidence and insecurity. Insecure people need to announce everything. Confident people let their results speak. Second, you're going to learn the discipline I use to prepare for the biggest fights of my life. I'm talking about the real conditioning, not just physical, but mental and spiritual, the kind of work that makes you unbreakable. The kind of work that happens when you're alone with God and your purpose, when you run that extra mile at 5 in the morning and nobody knows, when you do one more round on the heavy bag when your arms feel like they're going to fall off. That's where champions are made. Third, I'm going to give you a 90-day framework that will transform your life. Not some vague advice, real practices, real disciplines, real challenges. The same things I did when I was preparing to shock the world. And when those 90 days are over, you won't be the same person. You'll walk different, talk different, think different. People will see something in you and they won't know what it is, but you'll know. It's called earned confidence. The old way doesn't work. Posting your plans doesn't make them real. Talking about your goals doesn't get you closer to them. The world is too loud, too distracting, too full of people trying to get your attention. I'm giving you permission to disappear, to go silent, to focus on your purpose without needing anyone's approval. And when you come back, you won't need to say a word. Your life will be the testimony. Before I tell you how to train in silence, let me tell you about the time silence almost cost me everything. There's a place 30 miles outside Reading, Pennsylvania, where I built my training camp. I called it Fighter's Heaven. It was on a ridge in the Pocono Mountains, overlooking valleys and pine forests. No city noise, no distractions, just me, the mountains, and God. I'd wake up before the sun even thought about rising. 4:30 in the morning, I'd be on the road running. Not jogging, running. And not just running to stay in shape. I'd run myself to exhaustion. That's when the real conditioning began. See, anybody can run when they feel good, but can you run when your lungs are burning? When your legs are screaming at you to stop? That's where I found my strength. I remember one morning, I was on my 6th mile, and everything in me wanted to quit. My body was done, but I kept pushing. And that's when I realized something. What counts in the ring is what you can do after you're exhausted. The same is true of life. You want to outrun failure? Outrun the people who quit when they feel discomfort. Outrun the people who stop because of despair. Outrun the people who are delayed because of prejudice. Outrun the people who surrender to failure, and outrun the opponent who loses sight of the goal. Because if you want to win, the will can never retire, the race can never stop, and faith can never weaken. Nobody saw this work. No cameras, no reporters, just me in the mountain. And that's exactly how I wanted it. Because when you work in silence, you work for yourself. You work for God, not for applause. I had this ritual up there. After running, I'd walk back slowly and think about what I had to do that day. Training is tough. It's boring sometimes, but when you have something to think about, a purpose bigger than yourself, the pain becomes bearable. I'd get back to camp around 7:30, and I'd rest, but I couldn't sleep. I was too jittery, too jumpy from all that running. So I'd watch television, read the papers, look at magazines. I'd bring my opponent into focus. I'd plan for the battle. Around 9 o'clock, I'd have breakfast. Nothing heavy. I didn't want too much on my stomach before my afternoon workout. Then I'd sleep from about 11 until 1:30. By 2 o'clock, I was in the gym. That mountain taught me everything about silence. But it was another experience that showed me why silent work matters. I was training for George Foreman, the biggest fight of my life. Most people thought I was going to die in that ring. Foreman was younger, stronger, meaner than anybody I'd ever faced. They had me as a 4-1 underdog, and I was training in silence, working, preparing. Not talking much about the fight because I knew talk was cheap. One day, a man came to my camp with his son. The boy's name was Jimmy. He was about 10 years old, small, sick with cancer. The father asked if Jimmy could meet me. I said, of course. Bring him in. When I saw Jimmy, my heart broke. This little boy was fighting a battle I couldn't imagine. But his eyes were full of life, full of hope. He looked at me and said, Muhammad, I'm going to beat cancer and you're going to beat George. I got down on my knee, looked him in the eye, and said, Jimmy, I promise you, I'm going to beat George Foreman and you're going to beat cancer. We took a picture together. I signed it. To my friend Jimmy, you're going to beat cancer. I'm going to beat George. Love, your friend Muhammad Ali. A couple weeks later, I got word that Jimmy was in the hospital. He didn't have much time left. So I drove 3 hours to Philadelphia to see him. When I walked into that hospital room, Jimmy's skin was as white as the sheets. But when he saw me, his eyes lit up. I sat with him, held his hand. I said, Jimmy, remember what I told you? I'm going to beat George Foreman and you're going to beat cancer. Jimmy looked up at me and whispered, no, Muhammad, I'm going to meet God, and I'm going to tell him that you are my friend. The room went silent. We all cried. Jimmy died a week later. At his funeral, that picture of us was beside his head in the casket. This moment changed something in me. All that training, all that silent work, it wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about being worthy of that little boy's faith. It was about showing him and everyone watching that when you prepare in silence, when you do the work nobody sees, you can stand tall when it matters most. I beat George Foreman in the 8th round. And somewhere, I believe Jimmy was watching. Jimmy taught me that silent work isn't about hiding. It's about building something so strong that when it's time to show it, it changes lives. Years later, after I retired, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. The two things I was known for, moving fast and talking loud, became the two things I struggled with most. Speaking became hard. Moving became slow. At first, I didn't want people to see me like that. I refused to do interviews. I was angry, frustrated. I had to fight this disease as hard as I fought any opponent in the ring. But then something happened. One day, my daughter Hannah gave me a copy of something I'd written years ago in 1976. I'd forgotten about it. It said, "People often ask me questions I cannot very well answer in words, and it makes me sad to think that they cannot understand the voice of my silence." When I read that, I understood. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is its own kind of strength. See, when I could talk, I filled every space with words. I had to be loud because I needed to be heard. But now, when I can't speak the way I used to, people pay more attention. They lean in, they listen harder. They feel my presence instead of just hearing my voice. Parkinson's taught me something the ring never could. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be still. Sometimes your presence speaks louder than your words. Now, when I meet people, especially young fighters, I don't need to give them a long speech. I shake their hand. I look them in the eye. And somehow, they understand. They feel the years of work. They feel the faith. They feel the silence that built the legend. This is what I want you to understand. When you train in silence for 90 days, you're not just building skills, you're building a presence. You're building a depth that people will feel before you ever say a word. So now you know the stories. You know why silence matters. Let me break down exactly what silence teaches you about becoming great. There are 7 principles about training in silence that nobody tells you. Miss even one, and you'll fail before you start. Here's the first one. Champions aren't made in gyms. They're made inside. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Champions aren't made in gyms. Champions are made from something deep inside them. A desire, a dream, a vision. They have to have the skill and the will, but the will must be stronger than the skill. You see, everybody focuses on the external. They think if they just work out harder, run faster, lift more weight, they'll become great. But that's not where greatness lives. Greatness lives in your mind, in your spirit, in your soul. When I was preparing for my biggest fights, the physical training was important, but it was never the most important thing. The most important thing was what happened in my mind when I was alone. I would visualize the fight. I'd see myself moving, dancing, throwing punches. I'd see my opponent getting tired. I'd see his face when he realized he couldn't beat me. I'd see myself with my hand raised in victory, and I'd feel that feeling in my body. The feeling of knowing I'd done something impossible. This is what you have to understand. Your mind creates your reality. If you believe you can do something, you'll find a way. If you don't believe, you'll find an excuse. When you train in silence for 90 days, you're not just training your body, you're training your mind to believe without needing anyone else's belief. You're developing internal faith, the kind that doesn't need likes, comments, or encouragement, the kind that comes from knowing you've put in the work. Here's a test. Can you work on your dream every single day without telling anyone? Can you make progress without posting about it? Can you be disciplined without needing anyone to notice? If you can't, you don't have the will yet. You're still dependent on external validation, and that will always make you weak. The champion inside you is built in private. In the moments when you're alone with your thoughts, your doubts, your fears, that's when you're forging something real. That's when you're building the foundation that can't be shaken. But here's what most people get wrong about working alone. They think it means you're isolated. That's not it at all. Let me tell you what you're really doing when you're alone. Silence is where you meet God. When I was training in Fighter's Heaven, I'd wake up before sunrise and run for miles in the dark. No music, no podcasts, no distractions. Just me, the road, and God. That's when I learned what silence really is. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of something greater. Every major religion teaches this. The prophets went into the wilderness. Jesus fasted for 40 days alone. Moses climbed the mountain alone. Muhammad, peace be upon him, received revelation in a cave alone. Why? Because noise is the language of the world, but silence is the language of God. When you remove all the distractions, the notifications, the opinions, the need for approval, you create space for something deeper to speak to you. You start hearing your own intuition, your own wisdom, your own purpose. I became a Muslim because Islam gave me a direct relationship with God. I didn't need anyone to interpret God's will for me. I could pray. I could submit. I could listen. And in those moments of prayer and silence, I found my strength. This is what 90 days of silence will give you. A spiritual awakening. You'll stop living for the crowd and start living for your Creator. You'll stop chasing temporary praise and start building eternal character. When I was in that ring facing Foreman, I wasn't alone. God was with me. All those mornings I spent in silence, talking to God, building my faith, that's what carried me through the hardest moments. If you want to be great, you need to develop a relationship with something bigger than yourself, not for show, not because people are watching, but because you genuinely believe that you were put here for a purpose. When you train in silence, you train with God as your witness. And let me tell you, that's the only witness that matters. Now, once you understand that silence connects you to God, you need to understand how to use that connection to build real discipline, because faith without discipline is just wishful thinking. The real conditioning begins when the pain sets in. People think training is about pushing yourself. That's only half true. Training is about pushing yourself past the point where you want to quit. That's where the real conditioning begins. When I was running those mountains at 5 in the morning, the first 3 miles were just a warm-up. My body felt good. My mind was clear. But around mile 4 or 5, that's when the pain set in. My lungs were burning. My legs felt like concrete. Everything in me said, "Stop, you've done enough." But that's when I started counting. That's when it mattered. Because what counts in the ring is what you can do after you're exhausted. The same is true of life. You see, everybody can work when they feel motivated. Everybody can be disciplined when things are going well. But can you keep going when you're tired, when you're discouraged, when nobody's watching and it feels like your work doesn't matter? That's the test. During those 90 days of silence, there will come a moment, probably around day 30 or 40, when you'll want to quit. You'll think, "This isn't working. Nobody even knows I'm doing this. What's the point?" That moment is the test. That's when you find out if you're a champion or just someone who talks about being a champion. I learned that if I could push through that pain, if I could run one more mile when my body was screaming at me to stop, I'd wake up the next day stronger. Not just physically, mentally, spiritually. I'd proven to myself that I could endure. This is the secret. Every time you push past your breaking point, you expand your capacity. You become capable of more. And over time, what used to break you doesn't even faze you anymore. That's what 90 days of silent training does. It turns you into someone who doesn't quit when things get hard. Someone who understands that discomfort is just part of the process. Someone who knows that the pain is temporary, but the strength you build is permanent. But pushing through pain isn't enough. You need to know exactly how to structure your work so that every day builds on the last. Discipline is doing what you hate like you love it. I hated running. Let me be honest with you. I hated getting up at 4:30 in the morning. I hated the cold. I hated the pain. But I loved what running gave me. It gave me speed. It gave me endurance. It gave me the confidence to dance for 15 rounds while my opponent was gasping for air. Discipline isn't about doing what you love. Discipline is about doing what you hate like you love it. When I was training, I didn't wait to feel motivated. I didn't check if I was in the mood to work out. I had a schedule, and I followed it, whether I felt like it or not. Here's the truth about motivation. It's unreliable. Motivation is an emotion. And emotions change. One day you feel fired up. The next day, you feel tired. If you only work when you're motivated, you'll never accomplish anything great. But discipline? Discipline is a decision. You decide what you're going to do, then you do it. Every day. No matter how you feel, this is what those 90 days are about. You're not training your body, you're training your character. You're teaching yourself that your feelings don't control you. Your purpose controls you. I trained like I fought. 3-minute rounds, 1-minute rest. 3 rounds on the heavy bag, 3 rounds on the speed bag, 3 rounds on the jump rope. Every single day, same routine, no shortcuts. Why? Because I knew that when I got in the ring, I wouldn't have the luxury of quitting when I got tired. I had to be able to perform when I was exhausted. And the only way to train that ability is to practice it every single day. So here's what I want you to do during your 90 days. Pick your non-negotiables. What are the 3 to 5 things you will do every single day, no matter what? Then do them. When you feel like it, when you don't feel like it, when you're tired, when you're busy, when nobody's watching. Do them. That's how you build unshakable character. Now, discipline keeps you moving, but there's something even deeper that separates the good from the great. And most people never figure this out. The will must be stronger than the skill. I've seen fighters with incredible talent lose to fighters who shouldn't have stood a chance. Why? Because talent without will is nothing. You can have all the skill in the world. You can be the fastest, the strongest, the most technically sound, but if you don't have the will to win, you'll lose to someone who's less skilled but has a stronger will. The will is what keeps you in the fight when you're losing. The will is what makes you throw one more punch when your arms feel like they're about to fall off. The will is what pushes you to train in the cold, dark morning when you could be warm in bed. Let me tell you about the thrilla in Manila. Me and Joe Frazier, round 14. I was exhausted. Joe was exhausted. We were both barely standing. My corner wanted to stop the fight. My body was telling me to quit, but my will wouldn't let me. Joe's corner stopped the fight after the 14th round. Not because I was more skilled, but because my will was stronger. Here's what I want you to understand. When you train in silence for 90 days, you're not just building skills, you're forging your will. You're teaching yourself that you can endure longer than you think, that you can push harder than you thought possible, that you can overcome obstacles that would break other people. During those 90 days, you're going to face moments when quitting seems like the only option. Your body will be sore. Your mind will be tired. Your motivation will be gone. That's when your will takes over. Your will is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Every time you choose to keep going when everything in you wants to quit, you're strengthening your will. And over time, you develop a will that's unbreakable. This is what separates champions from everyone else. Not talent, not luck, not circumstances, will. The decision to never quit, the refusal to accept defeat. The faith that if you keep moving forward, you'll find a way. But even the strongest will needs to be guided by clarity. You need to know exactly what you're building toward. Know your purpose or you'll quit. A lot of people start strong. They get excited about a goal. They make plans. They tell everyone what they're going to do. But after a few weeks, they quit. Why? Because they didn't have a real purpose. They had an idea, they had a wish, but they didn't have a purpose. Purpose is what gets you out of bed when you're tired. Purpose is what keeps you going when the results aren't showing yet. Purpose is what makes the sacrifice worth it. My purpose was never just about winning fights. If that was my only purpose, I would have quit after I won the championship the first time. But my purpose was bigger than boxing. I wanted to be a voice for people who didn't have one. I wanted to show young black kids that they could be proud of who they were. I wanted to stand for something bigger than myself. When I refused to go to Vietnam, they stripped me of my title. They took my license to fight. They took 3.5 years of my prime. But they couldn't take my purpose, because my purpose wasn't about the belt. It was about standing for what I believed in, even when it cost me everything. That's the kind of purpose you need. Not surface-level motivation, deep, unshakable purpose that won't let you quit no matter what happens. Before you start your 90 days of silence, you need to answer this question. Why? Why are you doing this? What are you building? Who are you becoming? And here's the important part. Your why can't be about impressing other people. It can't be about proving someone wrong. It can't be about getting likes and followers. Your why has to be about you and God. About becoming the person you were created to be. About fulfilling your purpose on this earth. Because when your purpose is bigger than your ego, nothing can stop you. During those 90 days, write down your purpose. Read it every morning. Let it remind you why you're sacrificing, why you're working in silence, why you're building something that nobody can see yet. Purpose is your anchor. When the storm comes, and it will, your purpose keeps you grounded. Now that you understand the lessons, it's time for the hard part. Actually doing it. Let me give you the exact framework. These practices aren't suggestions. They're the same disciplines that made me unbeatable. Miss even one, and you're cheating yourself. First, you need to make a commitment, not to me, not to your friends, to yourself and to God. For the next 90 days, you will not announce your goals. You will not post about your progress. You will not seek validation or encouragement from anyone. You will work in complete silence. Here's what that means practically. No social media posts about your journey. No telling people what you're working on. No fishing for compliments or support. No updating everyone on your progress. Why? Because every time you announce what you're doing, you get a little hit of dopamine, you feel good, you feel like you've accomplished something, but you haven't. You've just talked about it. When you keep it silent, all that energy that would have gone into talking gets redirected into doing. You become obsessed with the work, not with the image of working. Write down your commitment, date it, sign it, put it somewhere, you'll see it every day. This is your contract with yourself. Once you've committed to silence, you need a daily structure that builds your will every single day. Champions are made in the morning. The way you start your day determines how you finish it. For 90 days, you will wake up at 5 in the morning, not 5:30, not 6, 5 a.m. sharp. Why 5 a.m.? Because it's uncomfortable. Because it requires discipline. Because 99% of people won't do it. And you're not trying to be like 99% of people. When you wake up at 5 a.m., you're taking control. You're telling your body, I'm in charge, not you. You're winning the first battle of the day before the world even wakes up. Here's your morning routine. 5 o'clock. Wake up. Cold water on your face. Say a prayer of gratitude. 5:10. Physical work. Run. Workout. Whatever your body needs. 6 o'clock. Spiritual work. Prayer. Meditation. Reading scripture. 6:30. Mental work. Visualize your goals. Read something that elevates you. By 7 in the morning, you've already done more than most people do all day. You've trained your body, your spirit, and your mind. You've earned the right to face whatever the day brings. This isn't punishment. This is preparation. This is how you become the person who can handle anything. The morning sets the tone, but the evening is where you measure if you kept your word. Every night before you sleep, you're going to do a review. This is where you measure yourself honestly. Get a journal. At the end of every day, answer these 3 questions. 1. Did I do what I said I would do today? Be honest. Don't make excuses. Either you did or you didn't. 2. Where did I compromise? Where did you cut corners? Where did you give less than your best? Identify it so you can fix it tomorrow. 3. What did I learn today? Every day teaches you something. Write it down. Over 90 days, you'll have 90 lessons. That's wisdom you can't buy. This practice does something powerful. It keeps you accountable to yourself. Nobody's checking on you, nobody's watching, but you know, God knows, and that's enough. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. If you fall short, you don't quit. You adjust. You come back stronger tomorrow. Over time, these daily reviews build something incredible. Integrity. You become someone who keeps their word. First to yourself, then to everyone else. Morning and evening routines are your bookends. But during the day, you need practices that keep you focused. Here's how I trained. And here's how you should approach your work during these 90 days. For physical training, train like you fight. If your goal requires endurance, run until you're exhausted, then run more. Work in rounds. 3 minutes of intense work, 1 minute of rest. Repeat. The real conditioning begins when the pain sets in. That's when you count the reps. That's when it matters. Never let your body tell you when to stop. Your will decides when you're done. For mental training, visualize yourself succeeding before you even start. See it in your mind so clearly that your body believes it's already happened. Study your craft daily. Watch people who are great at what you want to do. Learn their patterns. Talk to yourself. I used to stand in front of the mirror and tell myself, "You are the greatest. You are going to win." Not arrogance, faith. For spiritual training, pray not just when you need something, but as a practice of gratitude. Fast once a week. Learn to deny your body its cravings. This builds spiritual strength. Read scripture or spiritual texts that elevate your mind and remind you of your purpose. The key is this: your body, mind, and spirit must all be aligned. If one is weak, the whole system falls apart. These 90 days are about making all three strong. Now, all of this work is powerful, but there's one practice that ties it all together, one that most people never do. Once a week during your 90 days, you're going to do what I call a silence fast. This is non-negotiable. Here's how it works. Pick one day a week. I recommend Sunday. From sunrise to sunset, you will not speak unless absolutely necessary. No phone calls, no texting, no scrolling social media, no consuming content. You will spend the day in complete silence. What will you do instead? You'll work on your craft. You'll pray. You'll walk. You'll think. You'll journal. You'll be with yourself and God. Why is this so powerful? Because in our modern world, we're never alone with our thoughts. We're constantly consuming, constantly distracted, constantly filling the silence with noise. But the silence is where the truth lives. The silence is where you hear your intuition. The silence is where God speaks. During my hardest training camps, I'd spend whole days barely speaking. I'd go into the mountains and just work, just be. And in those moments, I'd find clarity. I'd find strength. I'd find peace. Your weekly silence fast will reset you. It'll remind you why you're doing this. It'll give you the spiritual fuel to keep going. After 90 days of weekly silence fasts, you'll have developed a relationship with solitude that most people never experience. You'll be comfortable in your own company, and that's when you become dangerous. So now you know. You know the stories, you know the lessons, you know the practices, you've got everything you need to transform your life in 90 days. But knowing isn't enough. You have to do it. Let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to start strong. The first week, you'll be fired up. You'll wake up at 5 a.m. You'll do the work. You'll feel proud of yourself. But around week 3 or 4, It's going to get hard. Your friends are going to wonder why you're so quiet. You're going to see other people posting about their success, and you're going to feel tempted to announce what you're doing. You're going to want validation. You're going to want someone to tell you you're doing a good job. That's the test. That's when you find out who you really are. Champions don't need applause while they're working. They need it after they've won. So here's my challenge to you. Disappear for 90 days. Go into your cave. Do the work nobody sees. Build the discipline. Build the will. Build the faith. And when those 90 days are over, come back different. Walk into rooms with a quiet confidence that makes people lean in. Let your presence speak louder than your words. Let your results do the talking. You don't need to announce you're great. When you're actually great, people will see it. They'll feel it. They'll know. This is how champions are made. Not in gyms, not in front of cameras. In the dark. In the silence. In the moments when God is your only witness. I did it, and it made me the greatest. Now it's your turn. Train in silence for 90 days. Let the world talk after. If this message hit you, if you felt something shift inside while you were listening, then I want you to do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel. I'm going to keep dropping truth like this because the world needs it. Second, hit that like button if this resonated with you. It tells me you're serious about your transformation. Third, and this is the most important one, drop a comment and tell me what are you going to build in silence for the next 90 days. Don't be vague, be specific, write it down, make it real, and 90 days from now, come back to this video and let me know what happened. Let me know who you became. I believe in you. God believes in you. Now go prove it to yourself.